of the Radnor Township School District. Today is November 28th. Introductions and administrative remarks.
Thank you very much. Okay, hello everybody. So tonight's agenda, we're going to be spending the bulk of our time looking at student achievement reports from each of our individual buildings, and we also have some board action items that we're going to take a look at the end. And then for next month, we're going to be looking a little bit earlier this year at the 2018-2019 academic calendar, so we'll be presenting a draft of that next month. And then the high school, yeah. And then the high school is also going to be presenting the high school program of studies, which typically happens in December. The annual report of district data and student achievement, I wanted to take a couple minutes to mention the packet that was in your board packet last week and is also available on the table. We're trying something a little bit different this year, and you have a copy of numerous pages of data available to you that goes back about 5 years for most areas. And what this tool is meant to do is to serve as a resource throughout the year, answering some of the different data questions that come up during different conversations in this committee and possibly in other committees as well. It's not intended to include any type of analysis. It's just basically a reference of numbers available from across the district. The other thing you'll notice in the back from the business office is an appendix, which includes many of the acronyms that we always throw around in public education. So again, as a resource throughout the year, when those things come up, it's available to you in one convenient location. It is now posted on board docs for folks to download or take a look at there, and then Michael Petiti is also going to be posting it on the website and putting a little announcement in the Radnor Reader for anybody who'd be interested in taking a look at it. So it'll be available there throughout the year, and then of course updated annually. I wanted to give a shout out about Elementary STEM Night. It isn't until April 19th, but given that we had over 1,000 students and parents there last year, we're putting an outcry for presenters. We have lots and lots of volunteers who come from various businesses and jobs to share their expertise in STEM areas with our students, and there's a website where folks can log on and fill out a form to volunteer for the evening, and we would appreciate anybody who'd be willing to come forward to make another great STEM night this year on April 19th. That opportunity is going to be open until February 1st, and then of course we move into getting things organized and getting our students registered for the evening. All right. We're going to be moving into our annual school reports of data and student achievement, and before we do, I just want to give you a quick update. There was a yellow letter included in your packet that talked a little bit about the fact that now that we have the data portfolio where you're able to reference all these numbers, our principals and assistant principals that are going to be talking to you tonight are really going to focus on what they're doing with the data and what the data means. So you're not going to see a lot of those repetitive slides that you've seen in the past, and you're also going to notice that each of their presentations is a little bit unique from the other ones. So they get to show a little bit of personality in their presentations as well. I'm going to go over a couple things that apply to many, if not all, of the presentations. So again, we don't have to be repetitive as we're going through those presentations. So we'll do that right before they start their data presentations. All right?
All right.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thanks so much, Maureen. Next is public comment. Hi, Judy. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Judy Sherry, Governor Circle, Newtown Square. I typically, in the beginning of the meeting these days, there are questions that are answered from prior meetings. I didn't hear any of them addressed at this point, so I'm just going to remind the board of my concerns from the last meeting.
Excuse me, Ms. Sherry, this was provided in a hard copy form, and I believe... Oh, okay. I thought that you mentioned that. Okay.
So, in other words, we have them.
We have them. Would it be more expeditious to go through them before you make your comments?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Anyone have to make-
Thank you for the
Super.
reminder. Sorry about that. We're in a new location. I'm all discombobulated. Okay, so we did have some questions on November 28th, and we're going to provide some of those answers tonight. One of the requests was a request to post an online description of what is in the art collection for public view. And Mr. Stango is working on that right now. We do have a cataloging of the collection, but it's stored on some slightly antiquated technology, so we're taking a look at how accessible that could be. What is the district doing to prevent concussions? Last time we were together, I gave you a handout that talked about some of the things we do when concussions occur and the support that we offer for students, but I'm going to offer a little bit more detail on some of the preventative measures in place in the district. All of our coaches, as you know, participate in concussion-wise training, and that training covers 4 critical phases of concussion management. Phase 1 is prevention, then there's preparation, response, and recovery and return to play. During practice, the amount of hitting has been reduced, and the helmets have been updated to those who support the reduction of concussions. And the middle school has also recently put in a request for caps that are designed to go over the helmets to lessen impact during contact sport practice. So those are some things around preventative issues with concussions. Is there any interest in forming a committee regarding tackle football at the middle school at this time? The middle school athletic director shared that he continues to participate in league conversations around middle school contact sports, and at this time there is not a need to form a larger committee. How do clubs qualify to receive district funding? In an effort, as you know, to make a wide variety of extracurricular activities to our students, we have tapped into multiple sources to fund clubs. We're fortunate that funding has come from streams like the REF, the PTO, fundraising, and parents, and those things make it possible for clubs and activities that the students are passionate about to become a reality. For this reason, funding sources can vary on a case-by-case basis. We do see a need to look at this in the future and establish some common funding practices that would align some of those issues. What are the use of the pods in the building? I chatted with Ms. Purnell at the middle school about the pods at the middle school, and currently those pods are being used for team meetings, one-to-one and small group work, displays of projects, special activities, and sometimes just a quiet space to decompress and get away from some other activity going on in different areas. When data is presented from surveys, why are the answers to agree and strongly agree often combined? The answers to agree and strongly agree are often combined in an effort to identify overarching trends. As the committee digs into data, they do disaggregate this data, but in an effort to share snapshots of what sometimes is like a year or more worth of work, these things are often combined just to expedite the presentations. When will the curriculum committee review graduation requirements? All offerings at Radnor High School are reviewed each year, and this does include a consideration of the 4-year Radnor High School experience. The teachers and administrators who participate in this annual process do not see a need at this time to revisit the graduation requirements. The curriculum committee will review policy 217 at an upcoming meeting as suggested by the policy committee, but this likely won't occur probably until the next school year. Will Radnor High School be removing the valedictorian designation from graduation? There are no plans to remove that designation at this time. What is the English Language Arts Vertical Team? The English Language Arts Vertical Team is a group of K-12 teachers who meet by level and as a whole to collaborate around instruction K-12 in English Language Arts. The group typically meets as a K-12 group once or twice a year. The elementary group meets several days each summer as well as during the year. The middle school team meets more frequently simply because it's built into their schedule and they have opportunities to meet during the day. The group is currently working by level to examine written language and will be coming together to discuss the vertical alignment of written language. When will the increase in communication to gifted parents begin? This communication process began in September. The teachers of gifted learners should have contacted the parents of each student on their caseload and introduced themselves prior to the school's open house. How often do gifted teachers meet with classroom teachers? Elementary teachers meet with teachers about 1 time per week. The gifted teachers at the middle school meet once approximately every 8 days. The high school teachers of the gifted learners have contact with teachers prior to GIEP meetings, but they do not meet with them on a regular basis. Format's a little bit different at the high school. All TOGLs can meet with the classroom teachers as needed. So if there's a need from the gifted teacher's perspective or the classroom teacher's perspective, that's always an option. Can the gifted program survey be given to students? The survey was designed to be given to parents of gifted students as part of the audit, but the student experience was considered as part of the process. Was there a Radnor Elementary School representative on the gifted audit team? Last year, the teacher of gifted learners began in December and then was new to the school district. She was part of the gifted audit meetings during the second half of the year, so she wasn't with us until later on. Have the committee members been given copies of new club applications? Yes, each application for new clubs is shared with the committee, and then, of course, they're also posted on board docs for you to reference. All right, sorry about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen.
Back again.
Back
with
again.
A number of fewer comments. I just want to be sure, was this annual report, was this online? Because I did not see it online. The others reports were there. This was posted? It was posted today. Today? Oh, okay. Okay, because this also addressed some of my questions, which were the fact that the individual schools put a lot of data there, but it was difficult to kind of compare the one school to another school. And I thought it would be helpful to have some kind of a chart that would do that, which appears to be in this larger presentation. I do think that it's helpful for the administration to look at this from kind of from a distance, I guess, and just make some broad comments about the overall response that we've gotten from our students this year. And the other thing, I guess, is that oftentimes we compare ourselves to, Pennsylvania in general, and I think it would be interesting to compare some of our results to nearby high-achieving school districts like TE and Lower Merion. And really my other comment is, two other comments. I'm not sure that the substitute report and the fact that we've been using a lot of substitutes, we've had fairly high teacher absenteeism, is part of this committee, but I do think it affects students, and a number of times we've asked if there's been any explanation as to why we have such a high absentee rate from teachers. I know that we're doing maybe a better job filling the spots, but why are there so many teachers out this year and last year? And finally, the educational channel is a channel that's dedicated for education, and it's really a community resource. There have been, this year, weeks and weeks and months of nothing to view on the educational channel. And I think it's part of our curriculum. I think part of, I don't know if there's students enrolled in a course involving the television, but we've been taping shows that really, from the basement of the administration building, that people really haven't been able to see because they haven't been televised, and our streaming service is not accessible to a number of people. So I'd like some sort of report on that, because YouTube can be used for free, and so it's an option right now. And I'd like to know when this will change and when we'll be able to actually view the television and also view what's online. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Sherry. Any other public comment? Okay. Next is approval of minutes. I guess it's you and me. I think they're fine. I just noticed Mr. Kearney has some extra letters in his name on the front page. Might want to fix that. Otherwise, they're fine. Did you miss that?
I missed that.
Anyway, very good. So we'll consider those approved. All right, we can get into the meat of the meeting. Agenda item number 1, building student achievement and growth presentations.
Okay, as mentioned previously, I'm going to do a quick overview of some of the pieces that apply to most of the buildings, and then we will jump right into Ethan's presentation. So some of the things I wanted to update you on is, number one, the school performance profile. This year will be the last year that there will be a public school performance profile published. Next year, we're going to be looking at a new reporting tool, which is called the Future Ready Index, and we actually have that on our agenda to talk about. Sometime in January, we'll take a closer look at some of those specifics. So a little bit of change coming up. All right, another update for you. PSSA testing time this year has been reduced for grades 3 to 8, and I gave you some specific numbers there. We've been told that the testing time is going to be reduced by about 20 to 25%. You can see the minutes listed there. Of course, that varies by student and how long it takes a student to take a test, but they have eliminated a certain number of questions from each of the sections of the testing. So we're looking forward to having a little less time for testing next year. You've also heard, I'm sure, over the last couple of weeks about the Keystone delay. We have one more year in the Keystone delay, and now the class of 2020 will be the first class required to show proficiency on the Keystone in order to graduate, unless that changes again before this time next year. And then I just wanted to mention closing the achievement gap. As a reminder, you will hear some of our principals and assistant principals today talking about closing the achievement gap. We throw it around like we do acronyms, but just a review of what that means. There was a baseline established for various student groups back in 2012, 2013. And each year we have been charged with closing 1/6 of that achievement gap over the 6 years, 1/6 of half of the achievement gap. So in the first year, we established that baseline, and then the difference between that baseline and 100% was cut in half, and then that 50% was divided by 6. So each building is required to close 1/6 of that achievement gap in order to score their number of points that they're looking for, or in order to get a desirable score on things like the school performance profile. So I showed you an example down at the bottom. So if a specific group was 40% proficient, the achievement gap would be considered 40 points, 60% of that. So we take that and we divide that divide that in half, and then that's to be closed over the course of 6 years. So each year the bar is a little bit higher. So as you can imagine, here in year 4, schools are attempting to close a larger achievement gap than they have been expected to do in the past. Let's see, and that's it. And we'll jump right into Ethan.
You found it for us. That's
There you go. They're in order.
Does it make more sense to stand up? Okay.
All right.
Yes, please.
Welcome, Mr. Kearney and Mrs. Boylan.
Thank you. So we are very happy to share the Ethan Elementary School Report of Student Growth and Achievement. You went too fast. Oh, and here's our introduction. So we are very proud of the results for Ethan students. They continue to achieve at very high levels on all subjects on the PSSA. And our biggest challenge is closing the achievement gap. And as Maureen explained, that our achievement gap was established in 2015, which was our baseline year, and every year, every group of students is expected to do better. And we're finding a challenge with that as we get to a very small achievement gap. Our SPP score this year, we did earn points for achievement based on our performance. We did not earn points for closing the achievement gap, and we earned some points for academic growth, which is based on PVAS data. So what did we do last year? Our action plan when we left last year in November was to do a lot of collaboration to make sure we were being purposeful in getting our teachers, our building leadership, our coaches together. We looked at the PSSA results and said, well, what do we do? What do we do differently so our students can do better and show growth? We did a lot of monitoring of our academic achievement, and we had our curriculum in place with a big focus on the implementation of Math in Focus. Some of the things that we put in place that were a little bit different last year, our grade 4 students had a study on stress in the brain, and that was working with high school students and high school teachers. And high school students actually came down and shared with the 4th graders some strategies they used when they were taking a test or feeling anxious or had stress in their life. It was a really neat program, and it's being expanded into other schools this year. So we had a lot of good results with that. We also added an academic focus to our morning announcements, and we really, working with our SRT, which is our student resource team, and our data team, again, looked at the data so that we could create focus groups and we could create learning plans for individual students or groups of students, so again, they could make more growth. And then one of the things that was new to ITHN last year was investigating responsive classroom. And that is a social and emotional program. We had a core group of teachers trained, and then we did turnaround training, and it's in place for this school year. So looking at our results from last year, we changed and had a greater focus on nonfiction reading in grade 3 because that was one of the areas that our students didn't score as well as we had hoped they would. And some of the things that we're doing is, yes, even in first grade, we're teaching our students how to do close reading and how to make a text-dependent analysis. So that's simply reading and going back to the text and finding evidence to prove your point. So in mathematics, we added a small group study skills to support our students who were struggling with math and focus. We were happy to see that we did not have an implementation dip with the new math and focus program. We continued our professional development throughout the year and had a lot of grade level collaboration, both at ITHN Elementary and then across the district. And one of our points of pride was we were very happy to receive in the mail in August 2017 that ITHN Elementary was voted the #1 best public elementary school in Pennsylvania. So we share that proudly.
As Dr. Boylan said, one of our other points of pride is the high achievement that we continue to see in all of the subject areas. As you can see up there, the proficiency level for our students are very high in grades 3, 4, and 5. And actually, when you take a look at the number of students or the percentage of students who scored advanced on the PSSA compared to those percentage of students who scored proficient, in all grades and in all subject areas, we have more students scoring advanced than we do proficient. That carries on into math, as well as science, with 92.2% of the students being proficient on the PSSA in grade 4 science. There are a small number of students, however, still not yet proficient. It's a point of pride because the numbers are so small, but this is also an area of focus, as we'll talk about briefly. At this point, we are talking about very much individual students and not broad trends across the building. So this is the focus of a lot of our attention for this year. Another point of pride for us is the academic growth that we've seen in grade 5 English Language Arts as well as grade 4 math. And when we took a look at the 1,477 elementary schools who took at least one of the elementary PSSAs this past year, only 6 schools in the state have higher both achievement and growth in math, and 17 have both higher achievement and growth in ELA. So looking compared to how we're doing with statewide, we are still showing tremendous achievement and performance. We also made progress closing the achievement gap in science as another area of pride, but closing the achievement gap does remain to be a persistent focus area. We didn't reach the required percent of students in math or English language arts, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't score points for those areas on the SPP. Again, a small number of students. If we were able to move less than 3 students for ELA and 6 for math, we would have gotten some points towards our SPP score. And if we had moved more than about 6 of our historically underperforming students in ELA and 4 in math, we would have gotten some points towards our SPP score. So this is a persistent challenge for us. As part of our data analysis and the work that we and our coaches do with teachers, we did take a look at which of the specific eligible content areas we had relative strengths and relative weaknesses in, or students demonstrated relative strengths and weaknesses in last year. So this is something that is being shared with teachers and is being worked on in classrooms this year. Median academic growth expectations.
Wait, sorry, back on that last slide. Are those the areas that are problem areas, or are those areas where we excel?
These were areas where we saw relative weakness.
Okay, thank you. Just wasn't sure.
Mm-hmm. Median academic growth expectations, again, we had some mixed results, but there were a few areas where we didn't meet the standard for academic growth. 4th grade English language arts, 5th grade math, and 4th grade science. Again, this is something that we've made teachers aware of, and they know those students who did and did not meet the academic growth standards from their classes from last year. We saw a lot of overlap between the PSSA results and the MAP data. In general, in broad terms, we do see, again, very high achievement, but not the growth that we'd like to see. The growth this past year on MAP was a little out of sync with what we've seen the past several years. It was a little bit lower than typical, but it was, in broad terms, consistent with what we saw in PSSA. I think you've got that data in your data portfolio for past years.
So then what are our action steps moving forward? In the area of language arts, we're going to continue to focus and have instruction on the TDA and the constructed response, and we're going to continue to do the work we've done with looking at individual teachers to review their data and to look as a school to see how we can create learning plans for individual students. And in the area of mathematics, one of our building goals this year is to refine our instructional practices. We really want to look at how we can differentiate instruction for different students in the Math and Focus program. One of our other building goals is a social and emotional goal, is we have had a lot of training, and we have been able to have a school-wide use of responsive classroom, and those techniques are to build community and hopefully strengthen student learning. Again, we've had a core group of teachers trained. We've also done training for teachers and paraprofessionals who didn't attend the actual training, and we've been modeling responsive classroom practices during all of our staff meetings, which has gone very well. So in conclusion, we are very proud of the education we provide to our students, and especially proud of our high academic achievement. And we know that we're going to continue to work to meet the specific needs of individual students so that everyone achieves proficiency and is able to demonstrate more growth. Thank you.
Questions?
I just have some general comments. I'm going to say what I said last year. I'm sorry that you all have to even stand up here and address this data, because I know, the metrics show how good we are, and I am here and I know how good we are, and I know how hard you work, and I know the quality of the education here, and it's so unfair that you all have to come up here and play this game with a stacked deck. It's just not right. So I appreciate you coming here. My next question, though, is, and I'm sorry I came late, so maybe this has already been addressed. When I was looking over all of the information that's being presented tonight, it struck me how different all the presentations are, even though it's the same information. It's so hard to really see contextually what's going on with the schools because all the presentations are so different. Is there a way for us to see the data and compare apples to apples so we know sort of what's going on?
Yeah, I think the best
in a
place-
presentation that I don't have to go through. I mean, have we, just like a top-line report of...
Yeah, we can talk about that, and we did talk about the idea of even doing a walkthrough of the data portfolio, and that would be an opportunity to look at some of those comparisons as well.
I remember we did that one-on-one last year, and it was
Yeah.
very helpful for me. I
Yeah.
appreciated that. I would love that opportunity again.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And I guess, my question is, I think Julia's comments were somewhat on point about kind of having to jump through these hoops. Is it realistic? We're spending a tremendous amount of time on it looked as if a fairly small handful of students. Are we going to get there, or are we, I'm asking you a qualitative question. Is this something that can be done, or is this something that is insurmountable?
I think it depends what the this is. Can we have our students continue to have high achievement? Yes. Can I say that I can get 100% of our students knowing the individual students and their strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah.
Can every student be proficient at grade level? That's a challenge.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that's honest, and I appreciate your being open about that. Thank you.
But that's a mandate, remember, that's given to us.
No, it's a mandate, but, so are a lot of things that people don't do, like driving 35 miles an hour till you have to go 25 on Lancaster. I mean, ever gotten that ticket? I mean, there are a lot of mandates out there. It's a question of whether it's reasonable, and I want to have them be able to let us know what's reasonable. All right, thank you.
I got it.
Gabe's got it.
Welcome, Wayne Elementary. Hi, Nancy.
Hi. So I'm Nancy Ferguson, and this is Gabe Savage, and we represent Wayne Elementary. So we're here to celebrate gains in achievement and growth for our students. We're here to share our staff's collaborative efforts to help all students achieve and grow. We're going to share why we believe we've made some improvements since the last presentation. Nothing's been random. It's been targeted. It's been collaborative, and we'll continue with that. And we're going to talk about how we'll continue on this path to help all students reach their full potential. We made gains in growth and achievement this year, and we're very excited about that. Our SPP score went up 10 points from last year, and there was some very focused interventions that we think led to this. Our growth for closing the achievement gap in math for all students was significant, and we received some points for that, which we had not in the past. We also received points for closing the achievement gap in our ELA with our historically underperforming students. Again, this is an area that we received points that we hadn't in the past, which helped raise the SPP score. Our achievement also helped with that. We were consistent in ELA and science, and in math it increased in 5%. Why we're excited about the increase in the score is not the score itself. It's about the fact that we can look at the students, we can drill down, and we can see their profile, see what we did, and continue to build on that. This slide we have in here, it is another measure. It was the MAP measure. What I really want to take away from this slide is that green and blue are good. Green means that you're a high-achieving student and you've made high growth. Blue means that you're a low-achieving student, but you still made high growth. So we're looking at as most as we can for the blue and the green. The purple means you're a high-achieving student, but you hadn't made as much growth as was expected, and the red means that you're a low-achieving student and haven't made the most growth as you expected. So when you look on the left-hand side, 80% of our students in ELA were high-achieving. 57% made 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. On the math, 85% were high achieving, and we were excited about that, especially in the first year of math and focus implementation, and 43% of the students made the 1 year's growth in one time, which gives us an area of focus as well. Thanks, sir. We focus always on the whole child, as do everybody in the district, so we're going to continue to focus on achievement and growth. We're going to continue to look at targeted and specific interventions. We're going to embed them in the classroom and the school-wide practice. We are recommitted, I guess is the word, to inclusion because that works on both areas of focus, academic and social-emotional. We're going to continue to utilize our resources strategically to reach as many students as possible and continue to build and foster our school-wide positive community. Action steps that we had from last year's presentation. We do individual and team data conferences prior to the class coming in. So we meet our teachers in August and we hand them a portfolio and they have the incoming students' names, they have their profiles, they have how they did. We meet as a team, we meet with coaches, and we ask them to say, before you even know your students, how would you group instructionally? How would you set that up? Knowing the profile of the child. Now, a profile is one thing, getting the students is another, but at least there's a plan moving forward as to how we would group and what instructional practices they would use. We ask them to analyze and look at the patterns and plan prior to them coming in. We have 4 meetings a year that's embedded into their day where they look at MAPS data, PSSA data, any other kinds of formative and summative assessments to continue to reconfigure and hone their craft because they're experts in that, and there is no one way to do any of this. We have Title I math support. What was exciting about this for us is that we tracked the progress of the students last year, and in 3rd grade, 7 of the 11 students that received Title I math support ended up proficient in the PSSAs. In our 4th grade, 2 of 13 ended up proficient, and in 5th grade, 5 out of 20. So overall, 33% of the students in this regular education intervention reached proficiency. Ethan mentioned that we also put a focus on morning announcements. We called it WOW, Word of the Week. It was run by our humanities and STEM coach. It was using words like analyze, interpret, synthesize, as Dr. Boylan mentioned, digging deeper, and it was utilized in art. You would go by the hallway and you would see how did the artist synthesize X, Y, and Z. There were big bulletin boards. You could see the teachers taking it, word walls in the pods, and using it in their lessons. That's something we'll continue. We did a lunchtime game pilot in 4th grade with math and reading games with the idea of collaborating and making it exciting. That's not continuing because 25 minutes for lunch and doing that was a little bit ambitious. We had a STARS club, students triumphing and achieving results, and basically we had our humanities coach and our STEM coach create lessons in ELA and in math for grades 3, 4, and 5. We invited students to stay, and the results from that were in ELA. 4 of the 9 that were there for ELA ended up being proficient on the PSSAs, and in math, 1 out of 10. But we saw some results. This will be continuing this year, and we're doing 6 sessions instead of 4, 3 ELA and 4 math. We studied our intervention services, looking at schedules, looking at expertise and programming, and where can they be utilized the most efficiently for student growth. We continued targeting and modeling, collaborating with our coaches, our humanities, our STEM, our TOGLs that have been mentioned. We really set about refocusing on the purpose and expectations of the extension and intervention block, and taking that back for that particular purpose. Focused instruction collaboration is something we did all last year, bi-monthly. Last year it was a focus on math in focus because it was an implementation year, and it was building-wide and then times during the district. We continue with our school-wide positive behavior, which is in its 4th or 5th year of implementation, but we continue to build on that academic help as well as behavioral help. And then we had a homework club that piloted in May. It's called the Teamwork Club this year. It's revamped, and it's in collaboration with the high school. I'm working with Dave Stango, well, all of the high school people, but he's my contact. And students volunteer to come to Wayne every Monday from 3:30 to 4:30 to tutor, to mentor, and Mr. Savage and I oversee it, and we have a schedule and opportunities. So what was bought for the lunch club that's no longer going on, we use there as well. Points of pride. This picture shows in color our growth, and we're very excited about that. So the top slide you see, or the top snapshot, you see red, red, yellow. Red's not good. Yellow is a warning. Last year we were red, red, yellow in all of those areas. This year we're green, green, green. We're very excited about that. We'd like to be blue, 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 but we'll get there. This one I like. Again, I'm color and I'm visual. The top one is our 4th grade performance last year in math, ELA, and science. You see a lot of red, very few blue and green. This year, as you go down, you see a lot of green. You still see some red, which is an area of focus, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Again, it's more the high-achieving students not making as much growth. But you can see a significant difference from last year. And this is our 5th grade one, and you can see all green and blue. So we feel like we're on the right path. We're continuing to keep in place the systems and procedures that seem to be working, but we have a few more ideas after looking through the data. Again, points of pride is also our increased math achievement by 5% in a year where we started a new math program. The teachers really dug down, utilized the resources and the supports, and it was exciting. And we are very excited that there was some gap closure. Not totally, but it's going in the right direction. So that's an exciting point for us. As I said, focus is always on the whole child, so we're going to continue with an area of focus on achievement and growth. We want all students to grow and learn. I mean, that's really what we all are here for. We want to increase the achievement of our historically underperforming students and our regular education intervention students. And, of course, as I mentioned, we want to really look at our high-achieving, low-growth area. We also want to empower and support all students, particularly our historically underperforming students, socially and behaviorally. With school-wide positive behavior, we continue to utilize tiers. One of them is check in and check out. Teachers have also become teacher mentors for students. Our student resource team meets, and we have an academic and behavior focus, and that's something that we are continuing with. Action steps. Everything I mentioned that we did last year when we said we would is going to continue. But we are continuing to focus on, as I said, inclusion. We have an inclusion coach. She comes to our focused instruction collaboration meetings. She is helping us with a co-teaching type model, as well as differentiating and formative instruction. And that's been good. It's all year we're working on that. We've restructured our professional resources because we're a Title I school. We had funds to. We have a program called TALL, which is Team Approach to Learning and Literacy. We looked at those experts and we had them reconfigure a bit, so they're still seeing the first grade students because we hit them hard and fast, but they're also being able to push into our kindergarten in the morning, and that's been helpful. Talking about pushing in, we have all students staying for mini lessons in writing and reading, and we're adjusting and modifying so that they have the social and academic experience with that. I mentioned we're doing a co-teaching pilot in 3rd grade and hope to extend it next year to 4th and 5th. And we also have a math pilot going on where our 2 of our 5 5th grade math teachers are focused on teaching the math and digging deeper and specializing, which will get them ready for the middle school as well. We have the Teamwork Club, as I mentioned, which is the partnership with Radnor High School. And our school-wide positive behavior, we're trying to give our students more of a voice and choice. So we have student ambassadors who applied for the position. They're 15. They do things around the school. They're mentors in the community, connections to the community, and it's the first year doing it. We continue to practice the growth mindset with all of our staff and students and how we talk. We have signs all over the office. People have noticed. It makes me happy. I walk in every day, and then the first thing I see is, I can do hard things. I'm like, yes. So, I mean, we're working with that. I heard a public comment about the daily building subs. I don't know why the absence is, but I do know that this year it's been very helpful and consistent in keeping programs and interventions and things running. The continued targeted professional learning is what we're going to continue to work on. And as I said, lunchtime's back to lunchtime. It was just too short. So in conclusion, at Wayne Elementary School, we work to provide a safe and caring place for all students to grow and learn. We're making progress in helping all students grow and achieve. And everything we do is student-centered and guided by what we would want for our own child. So thank you, and if there's any questions, we're
Thank
here.
you. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
So I have a question that isn't about data per se, but I did pick up a trend at your school that was talking a lot about positive behavior support, behavioral interventions, coaching, that I didn't hear at another elementary school that reported. Can you just talk a little bit about, is that a problem? Why the focus on that at your school?
Oh, sure. It's a focus at our school because research shows that for students to take risks and grow and achieve, they have to feel safe, they have to feel accepted. So actually, Dr. Rabarchek, when I came, had started the school-wide positive behavior. So it's part of a framework. It's a mindset. It's kind of like a growth mindset, and we continue to tweak and learn. So we're all fortunate to have coaches. I'm fortunate in that the emotional support coach for the district, her house is at my school, so I can utilize that a little more. I mean, she does her fair share, but when it's your home, you can kind of do that. Does that make sense? So, yeah.
So you're really saying it's preventative, it's setting the expectation, it's
our culture. Yep, it's setting the tone,
right.
it's setting the
Okay,
culture.
so you're not trying to address, I guess what I'm getting at is, and you're
Is there a
answering it.
problem? There's no problem.
It's not a major
Yeah,
problem.
no,
Got
no,
it.
Yes. No, yes. It actually, and to just go on that, it helps when I have conversations and we do restorative practices with students. At this point, they come in and I go, so what's going on? I wasn't respectful. Well, what does that mean? I did X, Y, and Z. So it's really, I was on the bus before I came today, and I just reviewed with them, like fill in the blank, and it was helpful.
And Tron, you talked about with ITHA, they're looking at the responsive classroom, and they've trained a core team and what they're doing there. And one of the things that Dr. Rabarchek and the whole elementary team is doing is they're looking at all these different aspects that they're going about behavior programs at the elementary schools, and then also bringing them all together so that we are unified in our approach across all 3 buildings as we go down and look at these different programs.
Julia?
So you have to take this with a grain of salt because I just trashed the scoring and the tests and how they were unfair.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's an amazing achievement. That's really
Well, I
amazing.
agree with you because it's nice to have a score, and it's nice when it goes up, but I could also be saying something different. But I think the patterns, and that's what I like, all the different data is showing that the systems we're trying to continue with are working. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.
And I want to congratulate you on trying something and deciding it wasn't working and then discontinuing. I think that is really an important risk-taking thing as the executive leader of a school. Try it, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, no harm no harm, no foul. Try something else.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. That's creative, and I applaud you for that. And well done on the work that you've done so far.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the staff.
I
You
know.
can't do this by yourself.
I know. No, we can't.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thanks, Gabe.
Welcome, Radnor Elementary. Dr. Stevenson?
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to
Dr.
see
Murray?
you. Good afternoon. We are happy to be here as part of the Radnor Elementary presentation about this student growth. Dr. Murray and I, being newbies, are appreciative to the former administration and the current staff who have set such a high bar in relationship to what Radnor Elementary has done over the years, and along with the sister schools. And tonight is to talk about a snapshot of what the things that they have done in the past, but also talk about how we want to look at to take the school, a great school that we have, to another level, and look at those things about meeting the needs of the individual needs of students along with the growth of that complements what you've heard from the other schools. So Dr. Murray, who has worked so diligently to help bring this, synthesize this information, will talk about this tonight.
Hi, how are you? So our approach to examining the data was to really look at PSSA, SPP growth and achievement and identify the different trends and themes that are emerging through there. And what we're presenting today is that synthesis of the data that we've reviewed. So as an introduction, we know this, our overall achievement data remains relatively high and has remained relatively high over the years, similar to what our sister schools also presented as well. And the reason why we chose to present our data this way is because one of the themes that we are really looking at this year in Radnor Elementary is getting our data down to an individual student level. So the data that's presented here is really looking at individual student growth data, individual student achievement data, and making sure that we're getting down to every data point that we have available to us and looking at what that means for our students. So again, overall what we're finding is that our PSSA scores remain relatively high over the course of the last several years and continue that trend into this year as well. One of the things we did with our data is that we wanted to look at a cohort of students. Our PSSA data is typically reported as a third grade cohort, fourth grade cohort, or fifth grade, but we wanted to take it the next step and look at how those students are progressing across the years. So the data, again, that we're seeing is that our achievement remains relatively high, and what this graph shows you is following a cohort of students from third grade in 2014-15 through fourth grade into fifth grade. So this is our current sixth grade cohort. And what we're seeing is that we have, again, a high achievement, but what we're finding is that we have a lack of progression across the proficiency levels. And what I mean by that is that we're really looking critically at how many students are we really moving from below basic to basic each year? How many students are we moving from basic to proficient? And how many students are we moving from proficient to advanced? And the data that we're seeing here over this cohort of students is showing that our students are, again, while they're maintaining the high level of proficiency, we're not moving students positively across that proficiency band. We also followed the cohort before that, which is our current 5th grade students, so looking again at their 3rd and 4th grade scores. And we're seeing the same trend, that we are, students who are proficient are remaining proficient, students mostly who are advanced are maintaining some of that advancement, and students, again, who are basic are maintaining that basic proficiency. So this is really jumping out for us as one of our areas of focus. And the question that we ask our data team and that we're looking at is whether or not this data is going to continue to mirror that trend. What can we do to change that trajectory? How can we focus on student proficiency and make sure that we're focusing on that growth positively across the proficiency bands? We also looked at our map data to see, again, the trends that are arriving from there. And again, same trend that we're seeing is high achievement data. However, we're not experiencing the same level of growth, neither from our high-performing students nor our low-performing students. So right now we have our map data showing us 91% proficiency in ELA and 86% in math, which again we're very proud of. But our growth data is only showing us 56% growth and 36% in math. So again, we need to separate the two issues. We need to separate why students who are high performing, why aren't we seeing that same level of growth? And then also focus in on the students who are not as high achieving. And again, what are we doing to help promote that growth? In triangulating the data, we saw that our PSSA and our MAP data is very congruent, again, with the data from the school performance profile. When we look at our academic performance, we, on our school performance profile, we earned 87% of the academic points possible for academic proficiency. However, when we look at the achievement gap, we only earned 28% of those points, and we only earned 66% of the growth. So again, all the arrows are pointing to the fact that we know we're high achieving, and we really embrace that and we celebrate that, but we do see some area of really being able to target and focus on student growth. In reflecting on last year's, again, we were very grateful to the wonderful administration that was in place last year. They've put some really tremendous action steps into place, which we are continuing to celebrate, such as the elementary monthly collaboration meetings and the SRT student resource team, as well as some effective ELA interventions, such as targeted lessons for PSSA anchors and professional learning communities, and that targeted intervention that focuses on text-dependent analysis and constructed response. Additional points of pride include strengths. We tiered down to our strengths within the specific areas of math. And one of the things that we're seeing is consistently operations and algebraic thinking appearing as one of our strengths across 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade last year. We're really excited about this strength because this is absolutely in tandem with the results we were hoping to see from Math in Focus. One of the cornerstones to Math in Focus is really promoting algebraic readiness. So we're definitely seeing that trend, which we're really excited about. We are seeing some positive movement across those proficiency bands I mentioned earlier, so some movement of students going from basic to proficient, proficient to advanced. But again, this is going to be one of the themes of our presentations and themes of this year, is looking at how we can get more students moving in that positive direction. In addition, when we looked at ELA, we saw some trends across the grade levels, including vocabulary acquisition and use was consistently a strength. And again, we did see some of the positive movement between 3rd and 4th grade and then 4th and 5th grade from, again, the proficiency levels. Our science achievement data this year was really excellent. We saw 95% of our students who scored proficient or advanced, with 56% of those students scoring advanced on our science PSSAs. So we have a lot to celebrate. We have a lot of points of pride when it comes to science. At Radnor Elementary, we did have 3 students who were basic and 3 students who were below basic. But one of the other things we want to celebrate is that 100% of our students who are identified as Black or African American are proficient in science, and 83% who are identified as Hispanic are proficient in science. This is an important note to remember in a couple of slides when we talk about our achievement gap. So as I mentioned, all of the data that we triangulated are pointing to 2 main areas of focus for us. Number one, how are we looking at students growing in all of the content areas? And then number 2, how are we examining the opportunity or achievement gap for students? So one of our major data concerns is that, again, our proficiency levels are being maintained across the years. Again, students who are proficient are maintaining proficient the next year. Students who are basic are maintaining that. But we're not seeing enough positive movement across those proficiency levels. So what we want to see is more students moving in that positive direction. Last year in ELA, we saw 24% of our students move up a proficiency level. We saw 11% move down a proficiency level, and 68% maintain their proficiency level. From fourth to fifth grade, we saw 6% move up a proficiency level, 26 move down, and 69% maintain their proficiency level.
Can I break in with a question
Sure.
here? Are those, you only get credit if you move a category?
No.
Or do you get credit for moving within a category?
That's a great question. The way PD has a formula that measures growth. The formula is very complicated. I couldn't even explain
It's all
it.
right.
But you could still maintain proficiency, and that same level of proficiency, you can still have that proficiency level and still make 1 year of growth.
Okay.
So it's not defined by moving a proficiency level per se. However, if we focus on the proficiency level, then we would guarantee that growth. So that's why we're looking at, are we moving enough students across the proficiency levels, or are we maintaining that proficiency level?
Thank you.
In math, we saw, again, a similar trend where the proficiency levels are being maintained. So we're seeing 10% move in third to fourth grade move up a proficiency level, but 68% are maintaining again. And from fourth to fifth grade, we did see 6% move up, but again, 71% are maintaining. So again, our theme is that we are maintaining those proficiency levels, which could still show a year's worth of growth, but we want to really hone in on that and see if we can get students moving in a proficiency level. Our second focus area is really targeting the significant opportunity and achievement gap that we're seeing. Again, all of our data points are pointing in this direction, that we are not seeing students in the following groups demonstrating as high levels of, comparative levels of high achievement. So we really want to be able to look at targeted interventions and make sure that we are supporting students, all students, to reach high achievement levels. Again, we're seeing very similar trends for math as we are ELA in reference to our opportunity and achievement gap. And I mentioned earlier our science achievement and some of the wonderful scores we had there. Although we are seeing less disparity, we still see a significant achievement gap and opportunity gap in science as well, although it's not as large as ELA and math. So I had mentioned earlier in the beginning of our presentation that we're reporting our trends by number of students, because that's really one of our themes as a school as we're looking at data, is how are we moving each student. We are looking at opportunities for each student and getting down to, again, that student level of discussion with our data. We are looking to ensure that we're implementing our core curriculum consistently across all grade levels, but also looking to establish an instructional task force. The purpose of this will be to really examine best practices and even take the data trends that we're seeing and try and get to the root cause of that and determine what can we do, again, to change some of these trajectories. This instructional task force will also drive building level professional development, as well as opportunities to identify a process for using individualized proficiency plans for students. So again, getting down to each student, making sure that each student can see positive growth and progress. We also revised our data team. Again, the previous administration did a great job of establishing a data team, a very effective data team, but we are looking at revising it slightly to make sure that we have effective and efficient use of data. Again, to make sure that each data point is then converted to information so that we can ensure that that's impacting each student. We're also looking at evaluating and systematizing our student-specific interventions for math and ELA. We have established a Tier 3 intervention process so that students can have, again, targeted interventions for math as needed. And we also are implementing a morning math fact review for grades 3, 4, and 5. And our big theme across the district, across all 3 elementary schools this year, is really looking at differentiating instruction for math. Instruction with math and focus. We're continuing our coaching and modeling small group of differentiated instruction for ELA, as well as focusing on close read. I believe Mrs. Ferguson mentioned that as well, for better growth on analyzing text. And we are evaluating the Fast Forward program to look at that to see whether or not that can meet student-specific needs as well. So in conclusion, again, I mentioned in the beginning, we're very proud of our high student achievement. The staff does a phenomenal job. We have a great culture in our building that we're really proud of, and we are seeing lots of success and lots of student achievement. But what we need to do now is really peel back the layers of the onion and make sure that each student is seeing that same level of success and growth. So making sure that we're focusing again on those proficiency bands to see how we can get students to grow in that area, and then again, really examining our opportunity and achievement gap to ensure that each student is growing.
Thank you. Well done.
I have a quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
Can you go back a couple? On the kids that are moving downward, what's the action plan on kids that are moving backwards?
So
That's high percentage numbers.
So I've had individual meetings with each teacher where we're really looking at the data and not only looking at PSSA proficiency, but triangulate that with data, with math data as well, and looking at what are we doing, where do students need to get to for proficiency. So it started with individual data meetings with individual teachers.
Which is great, and I'm happy to hear that. But what would concern me with the overall picture, and I apologize to everybody who already did your presentation. I promise I will go back home and watch it tonight, but had to do something at work today, so I'm glad I caught this one. So you'll bear the brunt of my questions. I apologize. But the thing that would concern me is, I guess, then the tendency to look at those kids that are moving down and the kids are at the bottom, and then again, the kids that are in the middle are going to get kind of left to the side. So how are we making sure that we're dealing with all three layers, because they got to be different approaches?
That's a great question, and what we're seeing with our data is that we're not necessarily just moving one group or the other. It's a question of all of our students, making sure that all of our students are moving. So what we are doing is, again, going down to the data and looking at each individual student data, and then also looking at what does it mean to be, what does advanced look like, what does proficient look like at each level, in each grade level, and then we also have a tiered intervention system now, especially for math, that we haven't had in place before. So that is where we're starting to pull students and saying, these are the specific skills they need, what program, what support can we put in place for those specific skills?
Okay. And I just want to add the other piece to that is we need to look at it from a longitudinal space as well as looking at over a 3-year scenario. Some kids, particularly when you talk about kids in the middle, they go down, up and down depending on subject level or situational. So we look at, that's why we want to focus on how we look at the individual plan, because look at what factors may contribute to the child's changes in their scores as well.
Okay. So that sounds, and I appreciate the fact that it's done individually, because just watching whole blocks of kids is not really helping the individual child. But it sounds like a lot of work. Where in the day does this work happen in terms of the corrective actions and what steps we're taking, and where's the time?
Well, what we're starting off with, one of the things starting off with the instruction task force is to look at our best practices. So like a lot of times when you look at kids' achievement or success piece, you look at, where they find their success. For instance, so if a kid is finding success in math in this particular area, it may be what is being taught, the curriculum being taught a certain way by this teacher. So we're using those data meetings, those individual meetings, and we also are implementing the time with our teachers to use the time from the instructional task force or instructional committee to look at how do we use these best practices to meet the needs of those kids. And then when you say individual plans, then you can have clustering of kids who have certain
Similar.
needs. And so it's not just like when we say individual plans, so we're not going to have all 589 kids meeting one-on-one, but how do we look at that to meet those changes? Some of the things we may have to think out the box where so for instance, for math, where we have, so in one grade we have 4 teachers that individually teach math, that we may have to make some changes in math where they're kids are moved around based on that clustering piece. I mean, that's just an example of things that we want to think out the box. The goal is, not business as usual, but doing it in a way where we are still maintaining our success, because we don't want to lose the success by being radical and changing things, but we want to think out the box to use other alternatives to make sure that we find success some kind of way.
So do we have the proper tools and supports necessary for that? And maybe that's something as we get ready for another budgeting year, we should contemplate whether we do.
I think that's a discussion that we would have to have in the administration to make sure that we are using the resources that we currently have. And then, the administration has been very, the superintendent has said that if there are needs that we have to do, to ask for those particular things. So, and that's
because we do have some funds if we find mid-year that we need some, whatever, tools. I don't know what kind of tools I'm even talking about, but whether it's books or, something, widgets, whatever.
Did the chair of our finance just offer funds to our administrative team? Is that what I just heard? I'm sorry.
Whoa. No, but I'm just saying. And then I have two other really quick questions. So these lessons learned, and obviously each school is slightly different. Is there a good combination, and I guess this is probably towards Tony, a good sharing of best practices across the elementary schools to be sure that, if you guys kind of honed in on something here, if the data looks similar there, that we're benefiting from the work in one school at the other schools?
If I could just jump in with that one, I think that's one of the nice things that we see happening this year, with the presentations being each a little different, with each building, how they're going about looking at this, but also being collaborative in their approach. If we find things are working well in one place, that's part of the beauty of having 3 elementary schools. We want to replicate it as well, but we also want to take on the expertise and the uniqueness of each one of the buildings as well. So that is something that's part of the discussion.
Okay. And my last question then is going from the elementary to the middle school. At least I found with my own children, they were, where they were score-wise, when they made that transition, they went backwards. And by the time they went to the high school, they just weren't, they were highly proficient, and by the time they got to the high school, they weren't anymore. So I know that's a lot to do with motivation and friends and distractions and all those other fabulous things, but it worries me. And I think if you look at the data, my kids aside, look at the data. It shows it. 3rd grade, 8th grade, 11th grade test scores just across the board, generally speaking, ramp downward. So I'd be curious to understand, as we're looking at that K-12, kind of where we're going.
That is a good segue to our next up is our middle school and high school, and we can look at that.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Mrs. Purnell, welcome. Mr. Budabaugh, welcome.
Evening. All right, he's going to be my clicker tonight. I'm just going to go over the middle school, take a few minutes to review the information that you've had an opportunity to look at. Can you go to the first slide for me, please? And throughout the presentation, you'll see that our achievement is really high at the middle school, and the areas that we need to focus on is growing our students, particularly in 8th grade. And we have some systems in place towards the end of our presentation with where we've made adjustments that we're hoping will capture that growth so that it's commensurate with the high achievement that we have in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We had 2 new programs that we began on last year, Math in Focus and Amplify. We did make a double major change just in 6th grade with the loss of the double block in the English language arts. And then last year it was suggested that we look at our MAP data to see if we could also compare that with, to look at the growth data for all grades and subjects. Some of our reflections we did. We feel like we had a successful year with the Amplify Science program. Our vertical teams, which usually occur in the 3 in ELA, English Language Arts, Math, and the Science. As a matter of fact, our Math vertical team just met on yesterday. That's 6th through 12th, which is a good collaboration. Our science curriculum was updated this past summer. Pacing guides was new, just trying to tighten the system so that the teachers can be on par. And then when they meet during the counterparts meetings, which is usually once every 8 days, they're able to see where they are in alignment with the curriculum and try to be a little more lockstep. Something that we had done for the first time as a school in May this past spring was use the classroom diagnostic tools. We call it CDT for short. And it was able to allow us to see more specifically some of the strengths and the gaps with our students. And then, you know, of course, in the middle school, we experienced the last 3 years large numbers of religious exemptions. And we had gone from 156 to 144 to 99 this past year, higher than what we want it to be, but we encourage participation from our students being a public school. Also, we had introduced ILP, individualized learning plans, which was going to allow us to work towards goal setting, individual goal setting with our students. And you'll see in the bottom where it says under results how we moved. I'll go into that particular part. There was a reduction in our religious exemptions under the area of results. Our scores did decrease, but we still were above the state average, 1297. We did notice that our lowest group students, when you have the quintiles from the lowest to middle to the highest, that they did meet the academic standard for growth. And then working with our guidance department, there is something that's new, K through 12, our 339 plan, which is going to be a large portion of how we are evaluated for next year as we're working through this year. So we moved the individualized learning plan to Naviance, which is something that we've had for the past several years, which will allow us to capture major components with the students, their goal setting, selecting their goals, meeting with the teachers one-on-one, and then looking in more specifically their careers and their career and their future. Just a few points of pride, a couple of areas, selected areas, which you can see in front of there that we're proud of, identification, designations. Another point of pride, our performance in mathematics, science, and English language arts, state rankings for proficiency in advanced categories in Radnor Middle School. Keystone, we even had more students to participate this past year. We went from 143 students to 153. Points of pride in mathematics achievement in the rankings here. English language arts, point of pride. And points of pride for our historically underperforming students. You'll see the PSSA for 2016 and 2017 for 7th grade, doing a great job. And then using some of the MAP data. Actually, that last one on the MAP side where it says 6th and 7th grade mathematics demonstrated growth that should have been 6th and 8th grade on that particular slide. Go ahead, Ryan. Next one. When we get into our growth data, you'll see the next 3 slides. We have work to do in 8th grade. We've begun that work again towards the end of the presentation. We will highlight and delineate some of those differences and changes that we've made to adjust the growth. 6th and 7th grade, 6th grade exceeded. 7th grade met it, the standard, the growth. And then the 3-year growth for 6th and 7th grade. And 8th grade, we have work to do. English language arts, 6th and 7th grade, they didn't meet the projected growth, but the 3-year average exceeded for 6th and 7th grades. 8th grade, we have growth work to do in growth area. This particular slide, even though, you know, my dad always said, try to find something good out of everything. So the downward trend was less significant, and when we looked at it, we really do believe that the implementation of Amplify is allowing that downward trend to sort of stopping the fall. So we went from the -40 to the -29, but we have supports in place that we're beginning, and I'll talk more about the CDT and how that is helping us so far, getting us on better footing just the first 3 months of school. And then the ranking, the achievement at the bottom is still good, but the growth, we're struggling there right now. Some specific map achievement and growth, which you can see there, the comparisons for the math and the reading, and then the national comparison and percentile rank. And our focus areas. The reason that it's important that we're using the classroom diagnostic tools is that what it has done, it drilled down so specifically that it allowed us, we started work really back in January of this past year. We restructured our, our larger data team and pulled together a team of 5 to 6. And from January to 13th until about August, we did a lot of drill down work. How can we get more specific information? The teachers had said that what we were trying to get them to see was a 30,000-foot angle, and they wanted to see it more specifically for the students in front of them. So we were able, for the first time, to hand to the teachers what we were calling data portfolios or packets related specifically to the students, and it was given to them at the start of the school year, so the last week of August, explaining to them. And the work, the more refined work, and I heard some of the questions you were asking, some of the refined work is taking place in the vertical teams, on counterpart days, our grade level meetings, and then when we have our half-day coursework where teachers are able to drill down and look at who the students are that are really struggling. How do we move these students from below basic to basic and so forth? And what are the standards that we're really struggling with that we may not have identified? And then, as some of the others said, cluster them together and begin to put supports in place. Even that mindset in and of itself has been a major shift for us, just trying to work more collaboratively, more specifically. Who are the students and what is it that we need to actually teach them starting at the beginning of the year? And then the data portfolios with more specificity using Naviance is helping us to move the students forward. That's one of our key vehicles. Some of the action steps, which I sort of jumped ahead, are some of the things that we're doing in all 3 key areas. The tested areas, English language arts, math, and science. If you drill down, what we're doing with the students, we are putting it on Schoology, one of our learning management systems, where the teachers are meeting with the students. What is your goal for today? What is your goal for this year? What is it you'd like to work on? When they took the CDTs, every student in the school, the tests were administered in September. When we finished, we were able to identify with the students those particular areas that we were planning on working on and what we're targeting and drilling down to for this school year. The 3 targeted areas that you'll see, English language arts, mathematics, and science, we were able to glean this information from the CDT results. And then, of course, we have coach meetings in those various areas and running the various PLCs that are run by our coaches. In conclusion, this is our 2nd year with Amplify and Math in Focus, utilizing the information, the teacher collaboration, working together, meeting more frequently to identify those key areas that we need to restructure. We're trying to really focus on the standards. What are we missing? Where are the key areas? Trying to personalize their learning paths for the students, getting them to take more ownership of their own learning. Of course, the vertical teamwork, and then overall customization of what is being taught, how we're looking at the curriculum that was written this summer, working with our teaching and learning department, working with the teachers, other building principals. What are some of, even throughout the state, the Commonwealth, what are some of the key areas what are some of the strategies that they're using to move their students towards higher growth, better growth, and achievement? Questions?
Thank you.
So many that we're short on.
Yeah.
We're going to have to
You want to?
contemplate future topics for the next curriculum committee meeting.
I think that, yeah, that's a great idea, and that is the whole point of also having that whole data portfolio now, that this is something that we can continue to revisit. So I appreciate that, because I am looking at the time, and we have the high school left to go, and we have a, hoping to go into executive session at the conclusion of this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Mr. Bechtold.
All right. Good evening, and thanks for the
Mr.
opportunity to
Kevges.
present tonight. Radnor High School had another outstanding year, and I would like to congratulate our faculty, staff, and students, and also thank our parents and guardians, our community, and the board for the support of our students in our school. I'm going to hand the presentation over to Mrs. Kevges, our Assistant Principal of Academic Affairs. She's done much of the heavy lifting to pull this presentation together and has worked both with Dr. McQuiggan and our Radnor High School data team to reflect on our data and put together plans to continue to build on our successes at Radnor High School. So, Mrs. Kevges.
Good evening, everyone. Wanted to start
Greetings.
by saying, reiterating what Mr. Bechtold said, how incredibly proud we are of our students at Radnor High School and how hard they work. We're going to take a look at some of the highlights first. So, as you can see, we are consistently receiving wonderful ratings and awards for excellence. U.S. News and World Report awarded us a 6th gold medal and 6th in the state of Pennsylvania. The Washington Post, 3rd most challenging high school. Niche.com voted 2nd in Pennsylvania, so on and so forth, most recently being awarded an Apple Distinguished School, being honored for our innovative use of technology. So we'll continue to look at some of these points of pride as we go through the first part of the presentation, looking at different data points and then ending with the keystones, which will bring us to some of our areas of focus that we want to look at tonight. Our SPP score continues to rise over the past 3 years. In terms of our AP exams, we've seen an increase in the number of AP scholars, 17%. We went up from last year. In addition, for the first time, we had 2 AP International Diplomas awarded, which put our students in contention on a global scale, which is really quite a acknowledgement. In terms of our AP exams, in addition, for the number of qualifying scores, which means you need to score a 3 or above, we increased by over 5% from last year. So you can see over a 5-year trend, it's continually rising, not just the amount of AP students testing, but the qualifying scores as well. We consistently outperform state and national comparison groups for our SATs and ACTs, which is really indicating to us that our kids are ready for college. That's one of the first questions we always ask when they come back, and we always receive a favorable reply that we have prepared them. This year, we're proud to announce that the pathway that we put in place last year, Project Lead the Way and Advanced Placement, we qualified 28 students for that special designation on their transcript, which we are incredibly proud of. And our AP Equity and Excellence percentage continues to rise. We've gone over 10% in the past 4 years. Oops. Getting to the keystone exams, which will bring us to our areas of focus. We had the highest scores in Delaware County this year, again, which we are incredibly proud of. 94.5% of Radnor students scored advanced or proficient in literature. We had our highest score ever in biology with 90.9% of students, and we had the same percentage, 90.9 in literature as well, so really just great scores. So taking a look at the performance overall, it is either consistent or improved as we move through the past few years. And if you look at the breakdown on this slide between Algebra 1, Biology, and Literature, it shows you the total number of students that qualified for each of the categories, whether it was advanced, proficient, basic, or below basic. And what's important to note at the bottom is that our remediation really is working, and the keystone classes that we have in place and the other tools are helping our students when they retest. All 7 students that retested in Algebra 1 improved their score. All 4 students in biology improved their score, and as well in literature.
So are we still offering that, given the change in the keystones?
Well,
Because
I was actually
about
going to touch on that in a minute, yeah. Looking at PVAS, we are also showing growth continually over the past few years in Algebra 1 and Biology, as you can see at the bottom. And we've turned the corner in literature, going from red to green, which is always a good thing. So to answer your question, Mrs. Booker, we did receive notice from the state at the beginning of November that there was another delay, which Dr. McQuiggan alluded to before. Class of 2020 and beyond will be held to the Keystone requirement for graduation, which means that our current juniors no longer have to be necessarily enrolled in Keystone Literature if they do not choose to be. So we have communicated with the parents and the students that this delay has taken place. Letters have gone home, and they're really being given three options. They can opt out of the class, they can stay in the class and retest in December in a few weeks, and then the third choice would be to stay in the class, retest in December, and then immediately after that start the project-based assessment. The reason they would want to do that is because we know now that the state requires their highest level of proficiency to be on their transcript. So if a student doesn't want to see basic or below basic, that presents them the opportunity to receive a proficient score. Our first focus area comes in the fact that we did not reach the required % for closing the achievement gap for our historically underperforming students in either Algebra 1 or the Keystone Literature exam. So if you take a look at this slide, there's a lot of stuff going on here, but you can see the three different tested areas at the top of the slide, Algebra 1, Literature, and Biology, and it breaks it down between the two cohorts, 2018 and 2019, looking at advanced, proficient, basic, and below basic. And then we see some trends. So for example, in Algebra 1, students showed growth in both the proficient and advanced categories, but they also showed growth in the below basic category, which is something that we want to really take a look at and focus on. Literature trends in that historically underperforming group, we did not show growth in the proficient category or the advanced category. However, we see some growth in the basic and below basic, again, something we need to focus on. And in biology, we did show growth in the proficient and advanced category. However, the below basic category grew. So one of the things that we want to keep in mind as we move forward and look from this year to next year is with the Keystone delay in place, how will it affect our scores in terms of the SPP and the Future Ready Index? If you take a look, I'm going to show you a little bit of history on these next two slides, starting in May of 2015 with the class of 2018 that is now graduating or will be graduating, showing you how many chose to retest. So if you look in December of 2015, for those students that were not proficient or advanced, they were given the opportunity to retest in December. And you see that 67% retested in Algebra 1, which is a pretty high percentage, and 85% in biology. So January 2016 comes along, Governor Wolf passes the first Keystone delay, making the class of 2018 exempt from the graduation requirement. And so here we see the story. The following year in December, when the same cohort takes the literature exam, only 53% retests in literature. Again, keeping that delay in mind, when we look at May 2016, now we have students along the lines of 46%, only 46% retesting in Algebra 1 and 62% retesting biology. And with this new delay, I would expect to see similar patterns of less and less students choosing to retest.
And how are those kids performing from the teacher's perspective? Put the test to the side for how the teachers actually believe those kids are performing. Are they leaving Radnor High School well equipped, whether they pass these, meet these standards or not? That's what worries me more than anything. And even when we had this discussion about the delays and the messaging that we're sending out to parents, well, you don't have to do it. But we still want you to do it. I didn't feel the enthusiasm because it's actually helping the kids. It's, score or not, they need it to graduate or not. They need it for life. So that's what worries me is that messaging. And can we do something more? Can we, even if the state's not requiring it, is there some way that we can urge those kids who need the help to really take advantage of what we can offer them.
Right.
I just would ideally love to see if we can come up with another way. Because it worries me that the other 60% of those kids that didn't attempt the retest or didn't go through the extra help and the extra support. That's what worries
So
me.
I'll jump in here. One of the things I'll say is some parents are just philosophically opposed to it. And we have a very rigorous curriculum, and our goal is to make sure that every single student that graduates from Radnor High School is prepared to be successful when they leave. And our numbers of students that are going to four-year schools and two-year schools and that are being successful there are great.
Right, but so if you look at this cohort of kids, I'd be interested, no names, but at the end of it all, when they graduate, where did they land in the scope of within their class? Where were there other scores in their classroom, work, how well did they perform? Where would we rank them? I know we don't rank, but where would we rank them? And should we learn from that, or is there some way we could use that to encourage parents, even though the state doesn't require it? This is a service that's here for you. Your kid could really benefit from this service. That's the part that, and I know you guys can't control that, so I probably preach it to the choir, but it's frustrating to me to watch that happen.
I think that's a great point. We obviously look at our data and we look at ways that we can improve both the first time through. Again, our goal is first time through to get everybody across the hump so they don't have to go through that. So, and that's one of the things as we go through our focus areas this year, we're looking at making sure that we're improving our practices up front so that they don't have to be subject to remediation in the back end. So that is part of the discussion that we'll get into.
Well, and some of it's just course time, too. I mean, schedule, you don't want to take the class because it means you can't take something you'd prefer to take. I mean, there are reasons that people would choose not to do it, apart from the fact that they don't think they need it.
But it goes to a larger point that, we do wonderful things, and we've shown you all the points of pride and all the achievement that we're making, but we have to make sure that we're looking at every single kid in that building. And so that's part of our plan that we're going to be moving forward with. So what I wanted to do first was to try to just look at what we already have in place, that has proven to be successful with our students. And one of those things is using the CDTs, or the classroom diagnostic tools, that Mrs. Purnell was talking about in her presentation. So those reports are generated twice a year. They'll take them in the fall, and then they'll take them again in the spring. The spring usually gives them a better indication of how they're going to do on the Keystone exam. The fall is more to acclimate them with the types of questions that they're going to see on the test and just give them the exposure. Those reports are given to their Keystone area teachers, whether it's literature, whether it's Algebra 1 or biology, twice a year. Individual reports will go to students, and so that they can see how they did on that CDT and kind of get a feel. Our data team is incredibly strong. They take those scores and break down the Keystone exams every single year and try to identify the trends, especially for the historically underperforming students. They then take that data and try to identify areas of focus. In turn, we work with that information that they have presented to us as an administration, and we meet with the department chairs to see where do we need to focus further, what concepts or what skills need to be revisited in the classroom, and try to pinpoint those areas for improvement. Some of the other things that we have in place already is that every year we have presentations given to the students at the beginning of the year in the freshman and the sophomore classes to make sure that they are familiar with the test, the fact that it's 2 modules, the way that it's broken down. We give them lots of review materials, and we really spend some time working on good test-taking strategies. We brought in Dr. Dan Kane last year to work with the kids to try to help them with the anxiety surrounding these tests. So we have a lot of things, really good things in place. Looking at our AP teachers, we give them kind of personalized reports every year once the scores come out that show how they performed in their subject area, and break the test down into different modules to see how they did in those specific content areas to see where they can look at areas of focus as well. We have all of our academic support still in place, the Writing Center, the Math Center, our Essentials classes, the Keystone classes. We still have peer tutoring, and this is year 2 of looking at eligibility for our athletes and students involved in extracurricular activities. So grades are always first. We love that they're involved in lots of other things, and that's really important for them to have that balance in life, but Academics are why they're there, so we take a really long and hard look at that. We also have our mentor program in place for struggling students. And here's what we're going to be looking at this year and what we're already putting in place. Our teachers have come together in their professional learning communities, the teachers of our college prep students, to help address the curriculum for these historically underperforming students. So they are meeting on a regular basis. They are also incorporating peer observation within their classes to take a look at best practices and see how they can help one another, again, to meet the needs of these learners. And they are also going to be receiving professional development throughout the course of the year, beginning in December all the way through May, in addition. A couple new things as well. We are looking to reorganize the science department course sequence to address the needs of college prep level students. So moving forward, Science and the Environment, which was a junior year course, will now become a freshman year course. Will precede biology. As we know, biology is an incredibly difficult course. It has a large component that surrounds reading comprehension, a large component that surrounds vocabulary, and for our college prep students, that's often a really large struggle for them. And so the thought was to put Science and the Environment freshman year to give them that additional year of growth in their comprehension before they go into a class that is completely reading-based, and B, one that has a Keystone exam tied to it. So in conclusion, we will continue to examine our practices and make sure that we are addressing the needs of all our students. While our data is very positive, we always want to see how we can improve it and meet the needs of all of our learners. Thank you.
Thank you both. That was great. Further questions? All right. Class dismissed. All righty.
Okay, we have to just move through a couple quick action items because we have our board meeting today, and we're looking to the curriculum committee to move some items to the consent agenda. In your packet, you saw a recommendation for 4 new clubs for Radnor High School recommended by Mr. Bechtold. Care for Cancer, Homeless Youth Project, Philly Reads, and World Religious Discussion Club. We also have one club that's going to be reactivated at the middle school, the Language Club. And then under the overnight trips, this isn't anything new. These are things we've approved in the past. The Model UN trips, and also Radnor High School Jazz Band and Colored Guard for their Boston trip in April. The last item that we're looking to move to the agenda is with the support of teachers Carl Rosen and Paul Wright and the recommendation of the principal and the superintendent, we have a student who has requested to complete a student survey of both the students and tutors involved in the peer tutoring program at the high school. This is an alumni who's doing this as part of a college project. I gave you a sample of the survey, but according to policy 235, it does need to be board approved if it's completed by an outside organization, which would be an alumni or university. So we would need your recommendation to give that student permission to conduct that survey.
There is a copy of the survey. Where do we have that?
It was in your packet, the one that went home. Yeah. It's 8 or 10 questions, yeah.
May I ask a question? Go right ahead. First of all, it's so nice to see Kevin Stern's name on it. But my question was, I was reading it and it seemed to refer, is it right that it's a study about the impact of peer tutoring in classrooms where the ratio is high for students to teachers? Isn't that?
I think that's some of the underlying information he's trying to get at.
So I didn't realize, is Viewpoints considered a high ratio of students to teachers?
I don't think so. Not with two teachers in the classroom. It just might be a perception of something that he's studying, would be my guess.
Okay.
I think he's trying to look at the peer tutoring environment, whereas if you went to peer tutoring in a certain situation where 40 students showed up and there were 1 or 2 peer tutors, how does that compare to an environment where maybe you're working one-on-one or one-on-two? Anybody else? All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Just before we move on, Susan, to the next page, just want to thank Dr. McQuiggan and Dr. Robarczyk for all their work on the data presentations, the data portfolio. I want to thank the entire administrative team, and I want to especially thank the administrative team for, and to dovetail some of their earlier comments, thank them for what they're doing each and every day within the classrooms to look at our students, as individuals, to understand the skills, the challenges that they need, and to work with each one of our kids to make sure that we're challenging all of them. So we throw a lot of numbers up there, but behind the numbers are individual kids, and I thank you for the focus that you have on each one of the individual students.
Thank you. Any new business? All right. Public comment, very quickly, please, if there is any. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne. Just a couple questions. The data that was given for the destinations for the class of 2017, it would be helpful to, the percentage of those going to 4-year and 2-year schools is not included as it was for the prior years, the 2 prior years, so that would help if that information was given. And then I have a question on page 36 of the assessment data. This would have been great if this had been posted earlier, like a few days earlier, rather than the information. It was very helpful, all the information given by all the different schools, but the consolidation report I've been trying to review during the meeting. This is the percentage of students who reach target growth in the fall to spring for Radnor Township School District, broken down then by the elementary schools. And if I remember correctly, sitting in on all these meetings, the target growth is the hardest to reach if you are in the upper bracket of performance. The question I have is, it looks like the 2016-17 year for grades 1 through 5 has dramatically dropped off in this comparison. So my question is the reason for that. Thank you.
Hi again, Judy.
Hi, Judy Sherry. Just getting back to the initial response to the football concussions, the Inquirer also did a survey with all of the schools in the area about helmets. And I just wondered, Radnor wasn't a part of the response on that, so I wondered if we could get the results that Radnor would put in terms of making sure it has the most updated helmets for students. There was a little something mentioned about that, I think, for middle school in the beginning. And regarding the annual report of district data, on page 30, on page 2, I guess it is, it talks about unduplicated gifted, and I don't know what that means, unduplicated gifted. Then there's another gifted analysis later on that has slightly different numbers. So at some point I'd like an explanation as to what unduplicated means. There's unduplicated disabled too. And on that note, later on I noticed there were some initials that when I checked in the back I couldn't get any explanation on. Trying to go quickly here. Finally, I know. On 2016-2017 PSSA scores on page 19, is there a reason that we don't have math scores yet? Is that test taken later in the year? We have language arts posted, but not math on page 19. Does anyone have a quick answer on that? Nope.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. They were there this morning. I'll check them
not gonna
again.
know.
No, there is no reason why they should not be there. They will be
Okay.
there.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further questions, meeting adjourned. Thank you.